Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner, and today I have a special guest, Justin Allison. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Dr. Wilner. I just want to, extend tremendous gratitude, obviously, for the opportunity to jump on your show and have a little chat with you today. So I'm excited. I'm fired up to discuss locums and everything that's going on right now. So thank you.
Well, thanks for joining me during these difficult and strange times. Well, today we're going to talk about the business of medicine, and part of the business of medicine for physicians is getting a job. And there's about 50,000 physicians in the U.S. now who work locum tenens, as I did for many, many years. And I even published a book about it. It's a pretty interesting topic. And I understand that you're also in the locum tenens industry. So tell me, how did you get there and what is it that you're doing now?
I've been in healthcare staffing for, almost 17 years now. So for a very, very long time, got into it super early and focusing on locum tenens specifically now. That is the focus of our company, Aero Locums, and been after it now for several years, and really enjoying working with all the providers and clinicians, the physicians in both advanced practice providers that we work with, and it's growing, especially with the pandemic, but also just generally speaking, locums continues to grow. Like the number you mentioned, 50,000 physicians, that's just going to surge and spike over the coming years, especially the next 5+ years. The forecast, it just has the trajectory going up. So more to come.
Well, first of all, let me say that it's April 15th, 2020. Yes. And we are in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, which of course is everybody knows about, and it's changing everyone's lives. And so today I thought we could talk about how is it changing the locum tenens industry. You work as basically an agency, right, where you match positions to physicians and advanced practitioners like nurse practitioners. And so there are openings, and you're kind of the in-between person that matches them up. Is that right?
That's correct. And so we obviously there's kind of two halves to it, right? We have the client side with our hospitals and clinics, and then there is the provider side. So our physicians, our nurse practitioners, MPAs. And so we're the intermediary between the two, if you will.
So I've been hearing that there are two stories. One story is physicians are seeing fewer patients, closing their offices, dermatologists, for example, shutting their doors. My mother is in the midst of a dermatologic procedure, and she told me the doctor closed his office. On the other hand, the people in the intensive care unit can't get enough staff. So what are you seeing from the client side? What kind of phone calls are you getting?
Yeah, so as a complete side note, it's interesting. So we're headquartered in our office business complex. There's actually a lot of medical offices here. One of them literally right outside across the street is a dermatologist, and they have been shut down for the last 3.5 weeks. So, but what we're seeing, so to go back to a specific moment in time, it was the week ending of March 13th when things really broke loose, I guess, for us here in California. So as a side note, we're headquartered in Northern California, and we focus on the West Coast, California, Oregon, and Washington. And so it was week ending March 13th, and when things really just kind of started getting crazy for us in the locums world and, our business specifically. And we saw an instant surge of emergency medicine physicians, urgent care providers, even family medicine and primary care, right? Those are probably the four initial specialties that we recruit for in our matrix, that we saw just a spike in jobs, right? From clients and clinics that we hadn't seen a job from the last year or two, right? So that was the first week. So it was like, okay, well, this is going to positively impact our business in terms of the demand for providers. fast forward to the last 2.5 weeks, it went from like this to a steep decline, right? So to what you had mentioned, and we kind of talked about with dermatologists, but clinics are closing down, right? Providers are being furloughed or laid off that are in that really the outpatient setting the most, right? And then from there, we're seeing a significant demand and have for the last few weeks in hospitalists, intensivists, critical care physicians, pulmonologists. So that's where the trend is now, where for physicians and providers that are most in demand.
So say I was a internal medicine physician, I've worked as a
Yep.
hospitalist, I'm a
Yep.
specialist in pulmonary medicine, and I've got 2 weeks of vacation and I want to help out. If I give you a call, would I have a job opportunity?
Yes, and I think that might be a bit of an understatement right now. You probably would have several opportunities, and to couple with that is not only more opportunities for those select specialties. Rates obviously are significantly increased during this pandemic, right? A lot of the which is smart. It's a critical response situation, right, or rapid response, however you want to look at it. And in these events, right, we've had different versions of these types of events in the past. And one of the ones I worked through personally was the swine flu pandemic, right? Which we saw also increase in the demand for clinicians at that time too. So yeah. So you're if you are looking like, hey, there's a lot of physicians that they just want to help because that's they're in their DNA, right? That's their whole purpose. Their passion is to help those in need, right? Positively impact the lives of those in need. So if you want to help, right? Or to your point, if like, hey, you know what? I can help, right? I have a week a month here or 2 weeks a month there, and I do want to help. There's a ton of opportunity for those certain specialties right now.
Now, one of the big barriers to helping in the past has been licensing and credentialing.
Yep.
Now, I know there have been changes. They're trying to liberalize that so people can actually get to where they're needed. Have you been able to take advantage of any of those changes?
Yeah, so actually, we just sent over just yesterday another batch of providers that are not licensed on the West Coast. So keep in mind, we only place on the West Coast, right? So we just sent over another batch of providers for the EMSA, right? So to get them that temporary recognition for to be able to practice, right? For example, in California, if you have a license in Ohio, you can get approved, and it only takes like 2 to 4 days. Outside of the normal things that you have to collect on our end to get somebody presented, considered, and then ultimately, credentialed, which again, everyone's doing emergency privileging, credentialing. So that's, a whole nother topic. But for this specific to get recognition, is that you literally only need to send in two things: your driver's license and your current state licensure, right? To be put on this list, to be presented, to then receive that temporary recognition. It's fascinating what's happening right now. Like literally, like all the rules are off the table. In other words.
Right. So I'm personally, I've researched this and studied this and suffered personally from it. It took me, I think, 8 months to get my current Tennessee license, during which,
Right.
I don't sit around and twiddle my thumbs. It's a good thing I have other, interests, but, I'm waiting to
Sure.
go to work and the paperwork. Oh, we need this, we need that. Oh, we lost that. Can you send it again? And so maybe, at the end of all of this post-COVID, some of these regulations they'll realize that they really weren't serving a purpose, and maybe they won't reinstate them. That's kind of our hope. It's like the other thing is very similarly telemedicine. Also, if I'm in Tennessee and I want to do telemedicine with someone in California, I got to have a California license. They've thrown that out the window. Although it is state specific. There's about half the states that have relaxed and about the other half have not. I looked at a chart the other day and I'm sure it's, changing every day. So don't just assume you can go anywhere with your license, because it's always, the states are the ones that control. But have you seen any changes in your practice with telemedicine, or do you not?
So the number one, I guess, change is the amount of providers that we talk to on a daily basis that are wanting to do telemedicine that are only doing telemedicine right now, virtual care. So, I mean, it's been a huge boom from at least from the provider side in terms of who we talk to, that there is and that there's also a growing demand for that as well, right? So, absolutely, there's been a significant change, and I think to that point, which is it was pretty obvious that going back like 2 years ago that eventually over time telemedicine was going to become a bigger and bigger part of the healthcare system, right? And I think this is absolutely accelerating that because of the pandemic, which I think is a good thing for certain specialties and certain types of patient care visits. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
Yes, well, not surprisingly, I actually have thoughts about that. About 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even more, 10 years ago, I wrote an article about telemedicine, this new thing. And I thought it was a terrible idea because you're distancing the doctor from the patient. You're laying on of hands, that intimacy that you have in the room one-on-one, and the subtle things that come out during a personal conversation are all going to be missed.
Yeah.
However, a few years later, with TPA for stroke, I'm a neurologist, we realized that we couldn't have a neurologist at every single small hospital 24/7 to administer and check the patient, are they appropriate for TPA? So I actually worked with the Mayo Clinic for over a year with in their telemedicine program, where we reached out to area hospitals, some actually thousands of miles away, but with just like us, you're in California, I'm in Tennessee.
Sure.
Once you're hooked up, it doesn't matter. And we found that telemedicine for acute stroke actually worked very, very well. And there's been actually research showing that the outcomes are no different from the in-person neurologist to the telemedicine neurologist when it comes to stroke. Of course, that's a very specific kind of contained problem. But
it makes sense.
I've become more and more a fan of telemedicine, particularly if it's telemedicine versus nothing, right? So, in fact, I asked my own personal physician the other day, I said, are you doing telemedicine visits? Because, we don't want to go out unless we have to, right? And get in the car and drive and be exposed to the virus. Everybody's staying, shelter in place. So I'm thinking, well, what if I have to go to the doctor or I have some question or, that cough won't go away? What do I do? He said, and yes, they are. So I think my other hope is that, again, when all this is over, that the requirement that Medicare has waived now, that you have to have a license in every state. I mean, there are telemedicine doctors with 25 state licenses because they, all over the country. And, that's a few $100s per license, plus keeping up with all of the CME that's different in every state. It becomes a whole bureaucracy, and they all expiring on different dates. I wrote about this in my book, in the credentialing and licensing. It becomes a huge bureaucratic overhead, just to get to work. You've got to have all this paperwork. So COVID has shown that, well, doesn't really matter. Your physicians are by nature, I think, responsible people, right? I mean, it's very rare you get some irresponsible person that's going to go through medical school and residency and pass all their exams.
It requires way too much discipline and sacrifices to get to where you're at, or every provider has to get through medical school, residency, fellowship, etc.
So let me touch on a more delicate topic.
One thing I just want to add to that, one just fun fact that for the whole telemedicine, I read this a while back, well before the pandemic, and it's kind of like to what you pointed out, very specific to neuro, but is that it was like over 70% of emergency room or urgent care, immediate care visits could be done through telemedicine, and so it's going to wildly impact a lot of specialties.
Oh, I think so. As a neurologist, for example, I have epilepsy patients. They need to have their drug levels checked. Have you had any seizures? But their exam, which is hard to do by telemedicine, you can do it a little bit, isn't all that important for a routine follow-up visit. Those visits could really be expedited, better for the patient, better for the doctor, and focused, I think, with telemedicine. So I'm hoping that we'll learn from this experience.
Correct.
Now, let me get to this delicate issue.
Yeah.
You know, some physicians, in fact, I forget I think it's something like 10% of the 1 million or so US physicians are 70 years old or above. And most of those are males, because in the old days, it was mostly men that went to medical school. Now it's about 50-50. So the 70-year-olds, generally men. So 70-year-old men are in a high risk group for having severe complications from COVID-19.
Right.
And they're older and they're males, and they may or may not have comorbidities that, again, predispose to serious illness and death.
Right.
So given that background, have you seen any physicians who are available but kind of reluctant to throw themselves into the fray?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's going to be probably an answer you're not expecting. So the first part of that is absolutely. We've seen a significant increase in physicians that have retired, or they've left a full-time practice, or they sold it, etc. That maybe have been out of the patient care practice for a significant amount of time, that are willing to come out of retirement, right, or their temporary retirement to help out with it, right? So we absolutely have seen a significant increase in that. Now, the interesting thing about your question is the people that are the providers that are hesitant, or they're reluctant, or they're like straight up like, hey, I don't want to travel. I'm only going to do back to telemedicine because I don't want to expose myself to risk to this virus. That has not been the audience of the demographic you just identified. It's honestly kind of across the board, and you would be surprised. It's actually some of the younger providers, right, from the age group you mentioned, that are the ones that are telling us, like, hey, no, I don't want to travel. I'm going to stay home, or I'm going back home, right? So those the age group that you mentioned, they are willing to work. They're coming out of retirement and happy to help. And actually, and I can only speak to myself, my team, but they're not telling us no. I know I'm more susceptible to this. I'm in that high risk category, so I don't want to help. That's not what we're hearing from them.
So there's a generation gap in terms of the approach to medicine. That's very, very interesting.
And I honestly, too, to that point, and this is for all the providers, clinicians, and this goes from doctors all the way down to nurses. But I am so humbled and grateful to work and being just, I guess, engaged on a professional level with so many clinicians and providers that are willing to go to the front lines, right? They're just I can't tell you how many conversations I've had, and people that I haven't heard from in a long time, or that just reached out to someone on my team that are like, hey, how can I help, right? Do you have anything available for that? They are seeking it out. They're like, I'm going to go run straight into harm's way. Like it is so amazing that there are so many providers and clinicians that's just, it's not even a thought to them, right? They're just like, I'm in, like, tell me where to go and I'm there, so it's amazing. And I have to extend, for whoever ends up watching this, and our conversation is like, just extend tremendous gratitude for all those providers and clinicians. It's amazing.
Justin, I want to thank you for that. And for those who are interested, how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can call me directly. Obviously, my number is 916-778-6030. I'm on LinkedIn. I would definitely recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn. So just LinkedIn.com, Justin Allison, and the company again is Arrow Locums. You can email me, Justin@Aerostaff, EROSTAFF.com. Those are definitely the three best methods to get in contact with me.
That's great. So I'm going to put all of those on this video, in type text. But
Sure.
I want to mention that this program is also available as a podcast. So if you're listening to it, Justin spelled everything out, or you can watch it on YouTube. So it's the same program, The Art of Medicine. If you're driving your car, better to do it as a podcast, or you're going to the gym.
Yeah.
But if you like to watch YouTube, we're on YouTube as well. Well, Justin, this has really been great. I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been educational and it's been fun. And it's really special times that we're living in. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, my pleasure. And again, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was obviously a lot of fun to chat, and obviously stay safe and stay healthy, and hopefully I know we will get through this. I guess I just want to add that in these times is be grateful. Have an attitude of gratitude. And have that belief of unshakable optimism that we will get through this, because we will. It's only a matter of time.